Ladies and gentlemen, Debbie Sterling and Tristan Walker.
Hi.
How are you?
Wow. Well, I know both your stories, and I've got to say, as an entrepreneur, they're both very inspiring. You both have gone down paths that people said you shouldn't go down. They said it can't happen. They laughed at your idea. They said the odds were stacked up against you. And for me, I love that. I love to prove people wrong, and I think you guys share that same passion. Tristan, let's start with you. Just tell us about your journey.
Sure. First, I have to thank Brad and the Intuit team for the invitation, and here's why. When I woke up this morning, I told my wife what I was going to be doing today, and I showed her a list of the run of show, and she said, whoa, like I love Debbie and GoldieBlox, I love Bill, and then she looked at me in only the way that she could, and she said, well, why did they invite you to this conference? So thank you, Intuit, for making me look cool in the Walker household. My story...
Told you to be funny, but not that funny.
My story, or my journey here, started about 6 years ago. My wife and I moved out to the Bay Area, and at that time, I realized Silicon Valley existed, right? I thought it was a place where semiconductors got made that got better over time, and that was it. And I saw that there were other 24-year-olds not only making millions of dollars, but fundamentally changing the world, and I knew I wanted to be a part of that. So that led me, at least my first year out here, to work at Twitter when there were about 20 people at the company. And then a year after that, I joined a company called Foursquare as one of its earliest employees. 3 years later, I said I wanted to go out and try this on my own. Built the courage to do it. Joined the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz as an entrepreneur in residence. I had the coolest job where they actually paid me to think of ideas to start. I spent 9 months with the venture firm and founded Walker & Company. We, to date, have raised up to $9 million for it. So Walker & Company, we like to say we exist to make health and beauty simple for people of color. And there are really 3 ways that we hope to do it. The first is our commitment to designing and developing products specifically tailored to the community's needs, while delivering on the promise of really amazing customer service and a beautiful, but most important, practical shopping experience for consumers. Our first brand is a brand called Bevel, and Bevel is the first and only kind of end-to-end shaving system designed for folks with coarse, curly hair. I really felt that there was a wide open opportunity to develop and build products for, as Bill mentioned, the most culturally influential, fastest growing demographic in the country, let alone, when you think about people of color, the majority of the world. So the opportunity is pretty sizable. The team that we've assembled is fantastic, and we're super excited about kind of where we're going.
That's pretty cool. Now, Debbie, your story is just as fascinating, and Debbie and I had the privilege of traveling around the country together because Debbie was the winner of Small Business Big Game, and her business received a 30-second spot on the Super Bowl last year. So I love your story, and I think everyone in this audience is going to love your story because it is very inspirational.
Yeah, well, again, I just wanted to thank you, Bill and Brad, wherever you are, for inviting me here and for the opportunity to share my GoldieBlox story with over 100 million people last year in the Super Bowl. So my story begins, I studied engineering at Stanford, and there were very few women in the program. And a lot of my classes, I'd be the only girl in group projects, and a lot of the times I just felt like all the guys were disappointed, like, we got stuck with the girl. And I struggled through that. But when I graduated, it was the proudest day of my life because I had this amazing skill set where with engineering you can build anything. And I went off to see all of my male classmates go on to become the founders, literally, of PayPal and Facebook and Instagram, and they were changing the world through technology. And I wanted more women involved. And as I started to look into this, I found that only 14% of engineers in the US are women, yet they're the fastest growing fields, and they're changing our world. And as I looked into the root of this problem, this engineering boys club, I discovered that the club kind of starts when we're little. You've got Bob the Builder and Handy Manny and Thomas the Train. Boys play with building sets, girls play with dolls. That's our culture, that's the way things are. And I thought, well, that isn't the way that it has to be. And I became obsessed with this idea of designing toys to inspire girls to get interested in engineering and technology from that young age. The toy I wished I'd had growing up. And toy industry veterans told me I was crazy. They said this would never sell. It would never go mainstream. But I didn't listen to them because I knew how important it was. And through months of research and building handmade prototypes in my apartment, I'd finally cracked it. I learned that girls really love stories, characters, and they want to make the world a better place. And that's what engineering does. So I created this book series plus construction set starring this girl inventor named Goldie, and she'd invent contraptions that help people and help her friends.
I've played it. I played the game.
It also works with 30-something men.
Very kind. Very kind. Add another decade, sister.
That's fantastic.
And last year when we won the Small Business Big Game program, getting to share the GoldieBlox story and literally our mission of disrupting the pink aisle with more, better, smarter options for girls, it went mainstream. And there's just nothing more fulfilling for me to be able to do this every day.
I always knew Barbie was a bully. One of the things Brad mentioned when he was up here earlier was that, our goal today is for people to leave here with tangible advice that they can implement in their businesses next week, right away. And it's easy to talk about successes. It's easy to talk about, how great life is and we're, counting our money. But I think you really learn a lot by the failures. And when I was first starting out, I like to hear about people's stumbling blocks. I like to hear about their failures because it would help me prevent my business from making those same mistakes. So what were some of the biggest obstacles you guys faced and had to overcome on your journeys? Tristan?
Yeah. So when I think about this, I used to hear yes a lot, right? Yes, you're going to succeed. Yes, you're going to get into this school. Yes, you should do this and that. Starting this business was the first time I heard no quite a bit. And it took me, in the time that I was at the venture firm, really 7 months to realize that meant I had a good idea, right? One of my kind of mentors and investors, Ben Horowitz, he always says something that has stuck with me to this day. He says, usually what looks like a bad idea is a good idea, and what looks like a good idea is a bad idea. The perfect example is a company called Airbnb, where you can actually rent out your home to folks you may not know. 10 years ago, folks would have thought that was crazy, and they've created tons of value in the world as a result of building that business. And when I started this business, when I went out to raise money, previously a lot of venture capitalists said, whatever you start, you could start a stock company and I'm in, right? And it wasn't until it started to get real that I would hear no after no after no after no. But when I would pitch some of the more conventional ideas, I wanted to build a bank, I wanted to fix childhood obesity, I wanted to do all types of things like that, folks thought that those were great ideas and wanted to support it. But usually for those things that look like good ideas, there's probably a lot of other people working on those same things, right? And you kind of reduce the amount of value that you can create in the world. And it wasn't until I heard those no's and then finally heard that one yes that I knew I had something. So kind of the failure of sorts that I had to experience is just hearing no over and over and over again and persevering through that. And fortunately, we're creating tons of value.
How about for you, Debbie? What was one of your biggest setbacks or failures along the way?
Well, we've had a lot, but I will say that one of them in particular, I remember when I came up with the idea for GoldieBlox and this read-along, build-along with the girl inventor. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, so I was doing this thing called rapid prototyping, which is actually something I learned in my engineering program, where I would just find stuff around the house, thread spools, clay, pegboard, whatever I could find, to whip together a rough, crude prototype, enough that I could put it in front of kids to get their reaction. And after spending a few months working on it, I remember finally going to my first play test, and I was so nervous, because what if the little girl hated it? And I walked in there, I was shaking, I almost threw up. And there were these two little girls, 5 and 7, and I'm just, looking into the eyes of the beast. And so worried that they were going to hate this prototype. And sure enough, I put it in front of them. And one of them got frustrated and started banging her fists on the ground, started crying and running out of the room. The other one was miserable. And, I thought, oh my gosh, I've failed. I've spent so much time working on this and they don't like it. And then I realized afterward that right before I'd shown up, they'd gotten a huge hair-pulling fight. So you couldn't even put a banana split sundae in front of them and they would have been happy. And B, it was okay that they didn't love it the first time because I was rapid prototyping and I was genuinely interested in their feedback. And I went prototype test after prototype test with these kids. And I did not have it right the first time or the 10th time or the 50th time. But I listened, quickly implemented it, and got to the point where by the end, I knew I had something that worked.
Now, every entrepreneur, yeah, that's great. Every entrepreneur has like a code that they live by. And for me, it's you got to be agile. You got to, respect and convert risk, and you have to walk it like you talk it. Actions speak louder than words. There's usually 3 or 5 tips that every entrepreneur kind of lives by, and they practice their business by that. And I love tips. Like I like lists, and I like to write tips. So if you could give 3 tips or 3 credos that you live by as entrepreneurs that people can leave here today with, what would the 3 tips or credos be?
Yeah, so the first that I'd say is don't let your lack of context cloud your judgment, right? A lot of folks might not pursue a certain idea because they just don't have the context around kind of what that idea is about, right? And you think about, our business and venture capitalists wanting to invest in it, a lot of folks just didn't want to acquire that context around what the problem was to do it, right? And I think that's an important thing as an entrepreneur to really hold true to. Number 2, something I learned at a very early age, you don't get what you don't ask for, right? And then the last one, and this is the best bit of advice I've ever received, and the most profound bit of advice actually came from Tyler Perry, the actor, producer, director, entrepreneur. I would go around with him. I had the good fortune to interview him one-on-one in a few cities about his entrepreneurial journey to small business owners like yourselves. And I'll never forget, it was in Atlanta. And there was a Q&A a bit, and there was one woman who raised her hand and stood up. And she said, Mr. Perry, as an entrepreneur, you have to go through all these trials and tribulations. Like, what do you do to kind of get back up when you need it? And he said the most profound thing that I've ever heard. He said he realized his potential as an entrepreneur when he understood that the trials you go through and the blessings you receive are the exact same things, right? Those trials are just lessons and blessings in disguise, right? And entrepreneurship is hard, as you guys are all aware, and you can dwell on those trials and also those successes. But I consider all of those successes, right? And that's really freed me as an entrepreneur to take risk. That, to this day, it remains the best advice I've ever heard.
So embracing the setbacks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to hear from you, Debbie.
Well, the first one I would say is put yourself out there. I remember when I was first starting out, I was worried that someone might steal my idea. So I holed up in my apartment, building my prototypes and not talking about them to anybody. And it felt really lonely. And I realized that if I were going to take this to the next level, it really takes a village to build a company. So I kind of had a 180 shift and started talking to everybody who would listen, waiters at the restaurant, flight attendants, anybody, because I was so passionate about what I was doing. And the funny thing is that once you start putting yourself out there, your passion, if you truly are passionate about it, it comes through and it becomes addictive. Yep. People want to be a part of it. And you never know, that waiter might have a cousin who knows so-and-so who can help you. These things really come out of the woodwork. So that'd be my number 1 piece of advice. The second one I would say is kind of going off of what Tristan suggested, ask for what you want. Be really specific and direct. because a lot of people might want to help you, but they might be busy or run their own companies. But if you go out to them and say, hey, Bill, I would like you to tweet about GoldieBlox to everybody today, which I'm actually asking you right now.
Awesome.
He's going to do it. He's going to do it. So just be really specific and direct and let people help you, but tell them how. Make it easy for them.
Brad's hoping that all the employees of Intuit aren't here because he's going to be getting hit up for raises next week. She said, ask and you will receive, Brad.
And then the third one, I would say, one thing that has been really helpful to me is I've really built this amazing network of advisors that have helped me take it to the next level. And some of these people, you need to kind of set your sights on who you think will be the most helpful to you. And it doesn't matter if you're afraid, how would I ever get to this person? Just put them on the list and start figuring out how to get there. And there's this great story that I heard, and I don't know if I should tell you all to do this, but I think if you find the person who you want to connect with, you can just guess at what their email address would be. Is it brad@intuit.com? Smith? You have
his cell phone number too? Maybe
it actually works if you put down this list of people who you really genuinely want to connect with and find ways, ask who knows who knows them, and eventually, if you're persistent enough and you are passionate enough and you legitimately need to connect with these people and you feel like they'll be supportive and excited about what you're doing, you can get to them.
I've totally done that.
It's good to know. I love it. I love everything about that. Well, I want to certainly thank you guys, but before we wrap, just last final thought. Where do you guys see yourselves in 5 years? Quickly, because we got to move on. We got a big lineup, but I'm just dying to know. 5 years from now, you close your eyes. Where are you at?
So hopefully, much of the same that we have today. A team that I'm incredibly proud to support and call colleagues. We hope to build a suite of brands that solve very important problems. But I think most importantly, just continue building things that matter, right? And as long as we're doing that, we know that we have a kind of a long roadmap ahead of us.
For me, my dream is that with GoldieBlox, we kind of change culture, change how people define what it is to be a little girl and what little girls are capable of. And I see GoldieBlox, this character that I've invented, become a true role model for little girls and little boys around the world, where they look up to her, whether she's in cartoons or video games or toys or whatever it is, that they can adopt an inventor lifestyle as an alternative to the princess lifestyle.
Well, in 2025, yes. In 2025, I want a list of the graduating class of the engineering program at Stanford, and it better be 50-50 women to men.
Should be.
Then you've done it, kid.
Then we've done it.
Well, thank you, Debbie and Tristan. Congratulations on all your success, and you've got a bright future ahead of you.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Great job. Awesome.